Hello, ladies and gentlemen. You are watching and listening to Going Viral. And tonight it's Ken Aaron from the West Coast. That's me. Oh, that's my YouTube video. There we go. Okay. That was a playback from YouTube. So, anyhow, yes, it's Going Viral. Ken Aaron on the West Coast. On the East Coast, we have Alex Stavropoulos and Dennis Goldstein. And later we'll be joined, hopefully, by Stephen Yanis. Is that the correct pronunciation, Alex?
Jonas, I think.
Jonas, just Jonas, yeah. He's a notable opinion pundit, writes a lot of books and blogs and so forth, and has some very interesting viewpoints on geopolitical issues. All right, so we're going to go now to Alex, and we're going to be going over not the current things of the day, but whatever is on Alex's mind. You got the floor, Alex.
Okay.
Please vote yes. Just say yes.
All right, so we can start with this about the French presidential race, with the we haven't discussed this particular candidate, kind of out there. Eric Zemmour, he's a French Jew, but not your typical French Jew. So
that guy, that's Alex. That's the guy.
Oh, no. This is the reporter who's talking about.
Okay.
Right, this is a clip from France 2040.
Let's go.
Well, he's been creating waves here in France even before officially throwing his hat into the ring. Far-right media pundit Eric Zemmour has now done just that, announcing his candidacy for next April's presidential election. The man, sometimes dubbed the French Trump, shot up in opinion polls in September and October, but his popularity appears to have plateaued since. We can hear from him now.
It is not time to reform France, but to save it, which is why I have decided to run for president. I have therefore decided to ask for your vote to become your president of the Republic, so that our children and our grandchildren do not know barbarism, so that our daughters are not veiled and our sons are not subjugated, so that we can pass on to them a France as we have known it and received it from our ancestors. Join me, stand up. We the French have always triumphed over everything. Long live the Republic and long live France. Vive la France.
Well, for more France 24's French politics editor Mark Perlman joins me here in studio. Mark, Zemmour is saying there that he's the one who's going to save France. Talk us through a little bit more of what's in that campaign video.
Well, what's interesting is, first of all, how it looks like. It's a very unusual campaign video. First of all, he is just reading from what seems to be an old script. Old why? Because it's an old-style library, it's an old-style microphone, and he wants to convey the image that he is the new Charles de Gaulle. Because if you put the mirror image of Charles de Gaulle calling the French to resist against the Nazis from London in June 1940, this is exactly the image. The message is obviously also very dark, but it's also a call to resist. De Gaulle was resisting the Nazi occupiers. Zemmour is saying, France is not France anymore. So you have to reclaim your country, and I'm going to take up this role and carry the flag to reclaim the country. It's a country the French feel dispossessed. They don't feel at home. Their internal it's kind of internal exile that they're feeling. He's saying that the French are being replaced, and the video is, we also see lots of images of violence, of gangs, and he says that the French are being replaced. He said immigration is not the cause of all our problems, but it has made them worse. So clearly he's sticking on those issues, immigration, Islam, and he wants to say, France is in a very, very dark place. The only way it can regain its composure, its identity, is through me.
Very extremist views, but what do you make, Mark, of his chances next April? If the opinion polls can be believed, he started out well, but his popularity appears to have waned a little bit.
Yes, but still, he's still hovering around 12 to 15%, which is a lot for someone with no political party who just threw his hat into the ring. And he's been neck and neck with the far-right leader, Marine Le Pen, who was until recently a shoo-in to face off again, like in 2017, against Emmanuel Macron in round two of the presidential election. So it's a rather astonishing performance, especially because he has, and it was the case also in that video, he has talked very little about purchasing power, about COVID, about what he wants to do about the economy, education, and so forth. He's really been harping on the issue of immigration, of Islam, of France disappearing, of fighting Europe and its technocrats, and so on. So the problem for him is that there have been a lot of criticism from inside his campaign that he doesn't know where he's going and that he needs to rebound. So there was this notion that he was kind of losing some momentum, that the polls were plateauing, and that he was risking really maybe a dip that could benefit Marine Le Pen and maybe the candidate from the Conservative Party, who is supposed to be designated in the next few days, because Éric Zemmour wants to be sure that he has a shot for the second round. But it's true that really the campaign is wide open. You have lots of candidates. Emmanuel Macron is now leading the polls. He's around 25%, which is not huge, but he's 10 points ahead of Marine Le Pen, of Éric Zemmour, and a crowded field of candidates. But everything is up in the air. And so by throwing his hat into the ring, Éric Zemmour raises his chances, but also those of other potential challengers, because it means that getting to around 2, you will not need a huge percentage, because the more candidates there are, the less percentage you need. But it will be very interesting to see if he can rebound immediately, because he's been in a difficult spot for the past 2 weeks, and he knows that things go very quickly in a campaign. He's commented a number of them as a journalist, as a writer. Now he's going to become an actor, and he said, you know, I'm going to be a target right now, but he's hoping that people will feel that he's been targeted, not because of what he did or what he said, but because of what he is now, a presidential candidate.
Either way, that declaration certainly shakes things up in the run-up to that election next year. Mark Perlman, thank you so much for joining us in studio.
Okay, so he's been a rather controversial candidate. To the extent that even though he's Jewish, the chief rabbi of France has called him an anti-Semite for his comments that it was a good thing for Vichy to send Jews to Auschwitz because they sent only foreign Jews and protected the French Jews. Again, he's, you know, very much populist, nationalist, again, like they said, comparisons to Trump with him. Again, he's very anti-Islamophobic, anti-immigrant, and but he kind of echoes those. Well, I'm sure we know them in the U.S. Those the grand replacement theory, where basically white people are being replaced. There's an active plan for Islam to basically take over France and force everybody institute a Sharia law and stuff like that. So again, he's Steve.
Well, I'm muted. Excuse me. Let me ask you one favor. What's the proper pronunciation of this candidate's name?
I think it's Zemmour.
Zemmour,
It's an Algerian. He's Algerian French, meaning his parents were born in Algeria. And the Pied Noirs, the French colonialists who had to leave, who mostly left the country after it won independence.
Okay, Zemmour. Okay, Stephen, are you aware of this? Oh, first of all, I want to acknowledge Stephen has joined us, and Stephen Jonas and Michael Jankowitz. So, Stephen, what do you think of that candidate getting the attention he's getting?
Oh, Ken, first of all, thank you. Delighted that you worked hard to send me all the codes and everything, and I finally figured them out. I'm glad to be here. A couple of comments. First of all, in terms of French history, I'll talk about Zemmour himself being a Jew in a bit. which by the way, historically is not unusual. But in terms of overall French history, as everybody around this table knows, and certainly many of our listeners know, but it's worth repeating, there's a tradition of anti-Semitism in France that comes and goes, and was first stirred up in a major way in the 1890s in what was called the Dreyfus Affair, which was the false accusations of a member of the French Armed Services who was sent to Devil's Island and stayed there for several years, and then was exonerated with the help of the great French author Émile Zola. That event did not occur in isolation in terms of anti-Semitism. Of course, anti-Semitism had been around in Europe since it was codified on the religious side by St. Augustine in the 5th century. But in the 1880s, there were a pair of Austrian politicians who decided that anti-Semitism could be used for electoral purposes. And they essentially invented a modern electoral anti-Semitism, which of course we've seen in many, many elections since then. So Zemmour, now of course Zemmour is not using anti-Semitism, but a modern form of anti-Semitism, which is anti-Islam. Now, in terms of the trajectory in France, and Zemmour's defending of Pétain, who was the collaborationist French general who headed up the puppet state of Vichy France during the Second World War. He was a collaborationist. And it's interesting, I just learned recently that Pétain was part of no French government at all. Whatever the politics and position of any French government, Pétain did not participate in any French government during the whole of the period between the end of the First World War and the beginning of the Second World War. And he was said to have at least some Nazi sympathies. So it's very interesting that Zemmour would be sympathetic to Pétain, even though Zemmour is a Jew. And this just absolutely remarkable distinction that, Pétain was okay, and I don't think this is true, but Pétain was okay because he helped the Nazis only in deporting foreign Jews from France, not in deporting French Jews from France. Well, there were plenty of French Jews who were deported. They were rounded up by the milice, the French sort of armed military-style police, I've known several French Jews who managed to survive that period. Actually, I dated one of them when I was in college at Columbia in the 50s, and I knew one pretty well, a woman who was a bookkeeper, worked helped my mother quite a bit as she got older. My mother did, and this woman was one of those who was hidden by nuns, and she did not find out that she was Jewish until she was 12 years old. So this is the whole period that Zemmour is trying to play light of, while at the same time he is attempting to mobilize anti-Islam sentiments. I'll just say two other things. I've been talking for quite a while here, very, very quickly. Zemmour is playing for, it's an international playbook now in capitalist countries, that if you can't think of anything else to try to mobilize voters, you mobilize them around hate. We know what happened here. It's happening in France now with this man, and actually it happened with Le Pen in the United Kingdom. In the Brexit battle, it was against foreigners. The foreigners happened to be people who came primarily from Eastern Europe, who spoke English and who took jobs that English people either didn't take or were not qualified for. But nevertheless, that the xenophobia was at the center of Brexit. So we've seen this, and of course the racism here blah, what's going on in Hungary. So that, and the last point is this. It is no surprise to me that Zamur happens to be a Jew. They were in the early days of Nazi Germany. There was an organization called, literally called Jews for Hitler, and I wrote a column about Jews for Hitler a year or two ago. It's on the BuzzFlash and Op-Ed News, and they clearly said, "We are German national Jews. We are concerned with the recovery of the German nation from the First World War," and they were still suffering, of course, from the reparations, et cetera, Versailles. And we are supporting the Nazis from a perspective of nationalism. They eventually disappeared at the time of the Nuremberg laws in 1935. And I don't know, I haven't read I know about the organization. Some of them, I think, disappeared literally. Others, they got out of the country. So Zamur brings together all of these historical trends. And I must say I was surprised to see him appear, because the French they've got Marie Le Pen. Why do they need another racist candidate? But they got one.
Okay, let me throw in and ask you two questions. What do you think he or Le Pen have a chance of getting elected? A. B. What do you think effect that would have for the future of France and for the future of the EU if they got elected?
Well, I think if they're able to, and I mean, boy, there's nothing particularly perceptive in saying this, that, if they can get together and one of them becomes the racist candidate, Le Pen came fairly close in the second round and in the last presidential election. So, it depends how much can they make an alliance? Second, can they continue to stir up all the anti-Islamist sentiment, which of course bears very little on the problems that face France and the French economy. That's a very interesting question about the EU. Very, very interesting question, because on the one hand, in the EU Charter, there is very important provisions in terms of maintaining democratic government. But the EU, and clearly, we all know Hungary, but there's several other members of the EU which clearly have non-democratic governments, and the EU is having a hard time dealing with them. B, the EU doesn't want to see another Brexit, particularly, a country it's one of the two major countries, with all due respect to all the others in the EU, both functionally and economically, politically, and geographically. So they don't want to see, the EU as a whole is not going to want to see France leave it. But you're right. If they could make an alliance and one of them becomes the candidate, it could present a lot of problems for France and also for the EU.
Okay, thanks. Let's go to Mike. And let me just give one piece of information. I just looked it up. In France, only 8.8% of the population is Islamic. And just coordinating to that, Germany, it's only 6.1%. So it's not like 25, 30%. It's just 8.8% is Islamic. But it's probably growing at a much faster rate because the fertility rate in Islamic population is about 3 times what it is in the Christian or non-Muslim. Okay, Michael, can you give us your opinion on this?
Well, I mean, Let's cut the guy some slack. He wants to get elected. So what if he revives death penalty and everything like that? But on a serious, yeah, there's a phenomenon among Jews and indeed all oppressed minorities.
Michael, let me interrupt you a second. Can you move the mic away from you? I think it's too close or something. It's really poor. Are you using a mic or just talking into the phone?
Just talking into my tablet.
Oh, there you much. That's much better now.
Basically, you have this phenomenon very often. Small minorities happen in almost every ethnicity.
Mike, we're not getting you at all. We're not. We're just not hearing you.
Okay. Can you hear me now?
If you don't move? Yeah, we heard. I heard the word. Can you hear me now?
All right. So how about now?
Okay. Just don't change.
Well, thank you for that. The idea is that you always have people oppressed minorities. You'll have some people who say, "Hey, look, they want to be accepted by the people who are oppressing." So they basically say, "Look, I'm not going to do it." By the way, you have to be on the left.
No, I'm sorry, Michael. It's just really bad.
Well, you might try calling in again because
Yeah,
it's
try
really bad.
disconnect and call back. Let's go to Dennis. Dennis, you're there. Come on, unmute and give us your perspective on the political situation in France. No, not yet. Okay. As soon as Dennis comes on, we'll put him on. So let's go, Alex. I don't have a viewpoint on it. Do you? What was your viewpoint if he gets elected?
I think if he or she gets elected, I think the EU would be in trouble, and you would be
Europe would be
both
in
of them, either of them. Well, him more than her because he's, I think, explicitly stated he wants to leave the EU, but she probably does, though she's been cagey essentially. So it could break up the EU, which, well, personally, I don't think would be. I don't think the EU as it exists is basically a bankers cartel, in my opinion, and is very bad for a lot of its countries. So I wouldn't mind seeing it broken up. But on the other hand, having essentially, a proto-fascist or an actual fascist with Marine Le Pen in charge of the country with nuclear weapons is obviously the last thing we should.
Okay. Oops, I muted you by mistake. Sorry, Alex.
No.
Continue.
Yeah, so should be the last thing anybody on the planet should want.
Oh.
Yeah.
Oh,
and
except
for
for
those who don't
Poland.
like the Russians, she has close ties to Le Pen has close ties to Putin, just like a lot of right-wing European political leaders.
Okay, let's give Michael one more shot. Go ahead, Michael. Turn on your mic. Michael, yeah, go ahead. Turn on your mic, Michael.
Can you hear me?
Yes, that's better.
All right. The only thing I was going to say is you always have a situation where somebody from an ethnicity, it's happened with Jewish also, where they try to say to the people who are oppressing them, "I'm not so Jewish, include me, include me in your group." And again, you have it sometimes on the left as well as the right, although obviously more often on the right. But it happens. It's almost it crosses the board as far as political status. They just want to be accepted or to be seen, not be seen as Jewish, so that they can be accepted in other areas and get elected. Or get to high positions of authority or power in a corporation, et cetera, et cetera. So this is actually nothing new. What's interesting is that he talked about France. It was okay to deport foreign Jews as long as they protected French Jews, but French Jews were deported also. The French Jews didn't really do much better, if better at all. So it's all a lot of bullshit. He's trying to get elected. If he runs and Le Pen decide to run, they don't make some sort of deal, then they'll probably split each other's vote. They'll split the racist vote, and I don't think they'll get elected. The main problem is if they forge an alliance, then we've got a problem. But as far as France's history of anti-Semitism, most countries have a history of anti-Semitism, at least most European countries. I mean, that's more the rule than the exception, including this country. So that in itself is nothing new. The idea is you appeal to that racism and anti-Semitism, and he's jumping in on the bandwagon, with the Islamophobia, and he's trying to get accepted, even though he is Jewish. The irony is that if the Nazis only deported foreign Jews, then his family would have been deported. I don't think he's connected the dots. I don't think he's making much sense. But the people he's appealing to, he doesn't have to make sense to.
Well, Mike, I think his family was in Algeria in France at the time. So, and I don't I don't recall any Jews being deported from there, foreign or, yeah.
But it isn't necessary to go on your own personal history. I find that as a major flaw in political statements. Well, my mother, I grew up this way and I grew up that way. My friend, this and that. That's all personal experience. So you could say, actually, I think it's slightly lacks intelligence to base your philosophy on your own personal experience. But we all fall to that flaw. I want to move forward to something that Stephen was recommending that I had recommended too, and we didn't get to. And it's about the energy crisis. So let me go to that. And let me find, there it is. And let's see if we can hear this. Is the sound coming through?
We are at the mercy of the weather.
I think we are going to be walking into a recession because there won't be enough energy to be had.
Whatever you want to call it, a crisis, a crunch, a shortage, what's been unfolding across global energy markets this year is impacting all of our lives.
Energy prices have soared, with benchmark European natural gas prices jumping almost 400%. Even prices for coal, which is being shunned by many countries, have almost doubled. That means in almost every corner of the world, the energy needed to heat our homes or fuel our cars or power our businesses has become drastically more expensive.
This energy crisis is climate change. But there are so many different causes for this year's energy crisis, at least 15 according to one list that an expert sent me.
We won't get into all of them, but we will look at some of the most significant factors behind the future of energy as the green transition gains speed. That's all coming up on Business Beyond.
The simplest answer for this year's energy crisis is the pandemic.
The first months of the COVID-19 pandemic led many economies to shut down. Demand for energy plunged as businesses closed, people stayed home, and planes were grounded around the world. And so fossil fuel producers responded. They stopped drilling for oil, cut back on natural gas production, and even closed coal mines.
This year, economies have roared back to life, and the speed of that recovery has caught about energy suppliers.
You probably have heard of the global supply chain crisis or the semiconductor shortage. All of these have a common cause, the unexpected bounce back in demand.
That is good news in a way, in the sense that as the economy has been picking up again after the COVID-19 crisis, we've seen higher energy demand from various economic sectors.
It's all part of the globally disrupted supply chains, from computer chips to containers to gas, because yes, hopefully we'll be coming out of this COVID pandemic at some point. The long-term fallout that we really didn't think about when we were all in lockdown is like how to sort everything out again.
But the timing of this year's energy crisis is a bit ironic, because the shortage of fossil fuels to power our economies comes as many countries are making plans to abandon them once and for all.
2070 तक भारत नेट जीरो का लक्ष्य हासिल करेगा.
We are on course to achieve our goal, our target of 100% use of clean energy by 2030.
We are, in fact, closer than we have ever been before to avoiding climate chaos.
Despite all of these big pronouncements and pledges to become greener, the pandemic has shown us a bitter reality. The world is still very much dependent on fossil fuels.
Even here in Germany, which has a reputation as a climate leader, we still got most of our energy from non-renewable sources in the first half of this year. On a global scale, that energy balance skews drastically more towards fossil fuels.
The underlying issue is demand is just, it takes a long time for demand to switch away from fossil fuels. In 1981, oil, gas, 4% of total energy demand. Last year, that share was still 84%.
The first place where we really started to see this year was in China.
China's economy was the first to bounce back from the pandemic thanks to demand for its goods from abroad. Its factories went into overdrive, requiring huge amounts of fuel. For China, that largely means coal, which still accounts for 70% of its electricity generation. But a number of factors, from a de facto ban on Australian coal to strict electricity pricing, meant that supply didn't keep up. By September, China was in the throes of an energy crisis. The government ordered factories to close and told coal mines to increase production.
The blackouts and power cuts to key industries have had a serious impact on China's economy. And it's basically led Beijing to double down on coal. Many fear that that will jeopardize China's climate goals. With the coal shortage at home, China turned to international natural gas markets to help keep the lights on and factories running. That huge amount of demand coming from China rippled across global energy markets, including to those here in Europe.
China's becoming a major force in the natural gas market as it works to wean its economy off of even more polluting coal. Each year, millions of households swap coal power for gas.
It's a laudable program. It's an anti-pollution program. So they're moving their coastal households from burning coal to using gas and to reduce pollution. It's great, and it works. China's big cities 10 years ago were the most polluted cities in the world, and now they're not anymore. So bad, but they're not the worst.
China's demand for natural gas, both during this year's crisis and in recent years, has put the squeeze on Europe.
The European Union gets most of its natural gas from Russia, but Norway, Algeria, and Qatar are also big suppliers. Brussels has made diversifying its supply of natural gas a priority, and it's turned to liquefied natural gas, or LNG, which is sent via tankers like these instead of pipelines.
In 2019, so pre-pandemic, LNG accounted for about 22% of the EU's natural gas consumption. That was a new record.
Competition between China and Europe for LNG has been building, but this year's energy shortages led to an all-out bidding war, and Europe has been losing.
The population figures are just eye-watering. So when it gets cold there, they suck up the LNG market, and then Europe has a bit less. But then, there's pipeline supply here. Norway, Algeria, Russia, they can supply us with gas as well. But that's where in Europe there's another problem at the moment. Actually, lots of them.
The biggest of those problems for the EU is Russia. Western Europe began importing natural gas from Russia, or more accurately the Soviet Union, in the 1960s. There are now several pipelines that connect the Siberian gas fields of Russia's Gazprom to various storage sites across the EU. The EU's dependence on Russian gas has long worried many within the bloc.
When you build a pipeline, you build a relationship, and potentially there's leverage both ways, by the supplier, by the buyer, and so security has been a standing issue in the natural gas trade.
And those concerns have become very real this year as the EU faces a natural gas shortage.
Wow, look at this. 94% of people believe company culture is important.
While some countries like Belgium and France have gas storage levels around 80%, storage tanks in other countries like Austria are sitting almost half empty after last year's cold winter depleted stockpiles. Making matters worse, Russia has been slow to send additional gas to Europe this year despite the critical shortage of stocks.
There is credible signs that Russia itself is struggling to meet all of the gas demand. Now, first of all, they had to fill up their own inventories ahead of the winter, and in Russia, as we all know, it gets really cold, so they can't sort of leave their own people in the cold and sell it all to plushy Western Europe.
But some analysts believe the limited deliveries are no coincidence and accuse Moscow of exploiting Europe's energy weakness.
Part of the slowdown in imports of gas from Russia, or I guess exports from Russia to us, is malicious.
Enter Nord Stream 2, the 9.5 billion euro pipeline Russia has recently completed constructing from the Russian port Ust-Luga to Greifswald, Germany. It will double Russian gas supply to Germany, but it first must be approved by German regulators. And that's not a given for a pipeline that has been embroiled in controversy from the start.
Critics have found a lot of reasons to hate Nord Stream 2. They fear how it will make the EU even more dependent on Russian gas. And they worry about how it will bypass Ukraine, where much of Russia's gas to Europe now flows through, and that brings in billions of euros to Kiev every year.
Some believe Russia is withholding gas exports as a way to blackmail the EU into approving the pipeline.
Whether Russia is weaponizing its gas exports or not, Nord Stream 2 is crucial to Russia's economic future here in Europe. Keep in mind, about 40% of Russia's government revenues come from oil and gas exports every year.
The Russians have spent a fortune on developing an entire new natural gas province, and as a result of which the Russians are positioned for the next generation of gas supply to Europe. If Europe then, as part of its climate policy, cuts back on natural gas consumption, what becomes of that investment then?
And it's not just Russia that's confronting a future where its biggest export is no longer needed.
So is the group of oil producers that, along with Russia, is known as OPEC+. The cartel has resisted increasing oil production despite rising prices. OPEC has blamed uncertainty about demand and the pandemic, but some see a deeper message in its refusal to bend to these demands.
We can't have consumer governments telling producer governments that we don't need oil and gas, which is absolutely the crux of their livelihood. That's where the livelihood comes from. Then those countries have every right to allow prices to go up now so that they can rebuild their coffers, to rebuild their budget deficits and just have surpluses, so that when there is energy transition and their oil and gas products effectively are out of demand, they have a buffer that they can help diversify their economy.
In other words, fossil fuel producers may be motivated to try and make money while they still can.
For Moscow, its current gambit to secure the future of Nord Stream 2 doesn't appear to be working. In November, German regulators suspended the approval process for the pipeline, citing issues with the parent company's business registration.
That doesn't necessarily mean the end of Nord Stream 2, but it is a delay that could set the project back by several months, raising the risk of serious energy shortages here in Europe this winter.
If it gets cold for long across Northwest Europe or Northeast Asia, there's a high risk of real power and heating outages, just as COVID surges again, and then you'll have people sitting at home cold and sick.
Like I touched on earlier, some see green policies at fault for this current crisis. They say that overly ambitious targets to reduce emissions have made fossil fuels pariahs before renewables were fully ready to take up the load.
And indeed, investment in oil and gas has more than halved since 2014.
The challenge is fossil fuel investment is falling very, very quickly. But for the world to keep meeting rising energy demand, investment in renewables needs to go up by 4 times. You're talking about like $100 trillion. That money is just not there, and it won't be there, that volume of money. So you're essentially talking about energy poverty versus green energy. And countries like China and India will simply not choose energy poverty.
But others are more optimistic that renewables could soon replace fossil fuels.
I think that that this situation exposes not so much the fact that we have tried to decarbonize, faster than wise. This is something that sometimes you hear from the fossil fuel industry. It's not that at all, frankly. It's rather the opposite. If we had a larger share of renewables at this stage, then it would mean we would be less reliant on fossil fuels, less reliant on the energy source whose price is currently very high because of increased competition.
After all, wind and sun are essentially limitless resources. As energy sources, they can insulate countries from geopoliticking.
Our reliance on fossil fuels, such as natural gas, has shown us that it can end up in very high prices. We need to transition away from that into a system of natural resources that are renewable and whose cost is virtually zero.
Many politicians are seizing this crisis as a chance to push for more investment in renewables. But building out that infrastructure could take years. So what about right now?
For now, governments seem to have decided the answer is more fossil fuels. China, as we saw earlier, has renewed its commitment to coal. And here in the EU, where many countries have pledged to give up coal in the coming decade, idled coal plants are being put back online. In the United States, the White House has announced it will tap its strategic reserve of oil to help bring down gasoline prices for consumers.
This, many analysts point out, is not the best way to get consumers to give up oil or gas.
The reality is, if supplies are coming down much, much faster and demand hasn't moved, high prices is the only solution, because only then will you actually get consumers to move away.
The fact is that if you put a price on fossil fuels without there being a clean alternative that consumers can shift to and that is also affordable, then behavior change is made more difficult and consumers are going to be less frustrated.
And that's where many people are finding themselves now. Frustrated, furious, at risk of not being able to cover their own energy needs. So what are we to take away from all of this?
For me, in another hour, I will start the engine on my car and I will know why I'm dependent on fossil fuels and so on. In the words of a famous cartoon of years ago, we have met the enemy and he is us.
For all of the excitement around the green transition, fossil fuels still power our lives. And until that changes, fossil fuels and the countries that produce them will continue to determine how much it costs to keep the lights on. And that's it for this episode of Business Beyond. If you liked this video, check out our playlist, and see you next time.
Okay, so we're back. And let's start the commentary on that. I thought that was pretty informative. That was very informative. Oh, what's that? Who put that up? Is that me?
Well, I'm not seeing anything, Ken. So.
Oh, okay. All right. So let me just get back, and I paused that, whatever it was. So anyhow, yeah, I thought it was very informative because it's talking about the practicality of people, cold feet. Your tootsies get really chilly in the winter. And Russia, Germany, all of Northern Europe needs the fuel coming from Russia and from coal plants. And, and then it's all connected. It's global economy. And then Biden throws some gasoline out from the reserves. I don't think that's going to do much. But I mean, what's a comment on this viewpoint of the forward-looking Northern European countries and China, which is demonstrated as making efforts to get off of coal, having to revert to go back to coal and gas and oil. No options. Let's go first with Alex, then Stephen, then Michael, and then Dennis.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
One thing they're not mentioning is that part of this is this just-in-time kind of mentality where you don't, again, stock up reserves, although apparently, as they said, apparently the French actually are being smart about this. But other countries, it's like, they don't. One reason why the Chinese have a guaranteed supply is they did long-term contracts with the Russians and with other natural gas producers. So they have a set, for the year. So they don't, and I think also Russia doesn't care all that much whether Europe gets their oil. This whole thing about they're good. I'm sure. I mean, they have some kind of leverage, but if Europe doesn't want to buy their oil, then they're very happy to sell it to Chinese or to other countries in East Asia or Central Asia.
Well, just to stay correct, it's natural gas coming through the Nord Stream pipeline, right?
I mean, they have plenty of pipelines to the Chinese, so they have, they're going to get paid for their. But and again, if the Europeans were to just open Nord Stream 2, that would, at least for this year, meet all of their needs. So in some ways, they're shooting themselves in the foot to please the United States with this anti-Russia NATO side. So but again, the Russians are whatever you think about them, they're in the driver's seat. They have the whole cards, to use a poker expression. They're gonna whatever way it comes out, they're gonna do fine. So it's a question: does Europe want to freeze? I mean, because this other analysis I saw said that if Europe has a major power failure, part of it could be out of power for like 3 weeks straight. So people literally could freeze to death. Like if you remember Rachel Maddow going on about how the Russians were going to freeze all of us by shutting down the power grid in the winter. I mean, this would literally happen there. But again, the Europeans would have done it to themselves. But I'll let Steve or someone else.
Okay, all right. Thanks, Alex. Let's go to Steve. Are you unmuted, Steve?
Yeah.
Okay, great. What's your experience on and because of your background and historically, history, is Russia trying to quietly manipulate politics in the EU by making them dependent with all this delivery of essentials, coal and oil?
I think that's a very good question, Ken, to which I think there's no clear answer. Because on the one hand, Russia would very much like to, expand the export of its energy products to Europe, which right now is principally getting this Nord Stream 2 pipeline, which runs under the Baltic Sea, open. And Russia apparently has lots and lots and lots and lots of natural gas. So they would really like to do that. On the other hand, there's this whole episode going on with Ukraine, which frankly I don't know what the basic causes of the Russian position are. Are they nationalist? Is it economic interest? Or are they? And these are probably all part of it. That they obviously have sympathy with the Russian speakers in Ukraine. So I think the Russians are. I think there are contradictions in the position of the Russians. I'd certainly like to hear what you and Alex have to say about that. In terms of the long term, the history of, and it is an energy crisis, and it's getting worse, and it's getting worse and worse. With the COP26. Certainly, observers much better informed on the technical side than I am were rather negative about what came out of COP26, and I think if that's true, and I think it probably is true, unfortunately, that's a result of what happened 30 years ago, and not specifically 30 years ago, but the position. Not only in this country, but certainly very heavily in this country of the oil and gas industry. That recently there were, in terms of protecting oil and gas production, which was a major and still is focus of the Republican Party, and it's the cash nexus and all of that stuff. But it recently came out. People, certain observers started talking about the comparison between all the happy propaganda that the oil and gas industry was putting forward over the last 30 years. It's not that much of a problem. It's fake news. There really isn't global warming. They paid off and/or lined up a couple of so-called scientists to say this. People pointed to the comparison with what the tobacco companies were doing for decades in terms of cigarette smoking. And that's something that I know, the details side a lot more about that than I do about the details of how long ago, the warnings were sounded about the energy crisis. One of the things I like to say about Nazi Germany is that it wasn't all bad. It was mostly bad. It was terrible. But in 1935, German scientists came to the conclusion that cigarette smoking was harmful to health, and they got through to Hitler, and Hitler issued a national ban, okay, and of course it's fascist and all that, not freedom of choice. A ban on cigarette smoking for everybody in Germany except members of the armed services. The Germans knew that, and one of the first people who made that position clear in this country, and he's somebody I worked with, and I'm embarrassed to say I can't remember his name anymore because it was about 30 years ago. Was a German Jewish refugee who was as a young man central in a study that was published in 1939, published in a scientific journal in this country on the dangers of cigarette smoking. I remember, last thing on cigarettes, because that's not the central issue here, but there are parallels between what the tobacco industry did and what the petroleum industry and petrochemical industry has done. I remember in 1998, a congressional committee, I forget which one, finally got access to tobacco company files. And I see myself standing in my office at Stony Brook, and I'm a preventive medicine specialist, and somebody who dealt with the issue of cigarette smoking and as part of the overall drug problem for quite some time. And when I heard that, I said, oh boy, this is it. Wait till they get to those files. And what those files showed was that the tobacco industry knew in the mid-50s. The parallel is just like we learned a year or two ago that ExxonMobil, there was a report inside ExxonMobil in 1978 about the potential for climate change related to the production of petroleum products. I guess the bottom line for me is that it may be too late. I've got, we all do, or some of us around this table do, children, grandchildren. I've got, my youngest grandchild is 5. And forgetting about a fascist future for this country, even if that doesn't happen, what's life going to be like for her when she's 50 in terms of what the climate's, and I'm gloomy about it. I have to say that. I'm gloomy about the future in terms of climate. I think it may be too late.
Okay. All right. Let's go to Dennis.
We're committing suicide by allowing the fossil fuel companies to keep going the way they are. It's our job, if we want to save ourselves, to build a resistance and to fight them like hell. I'll leave it at that.
Okay, and before we go to Mike, I want to put something up here. This is going to be a little controversial, but I'm going to do it. And here it comes. This is just a chart. And this is from 2016. Okay, so we can see here that France is 75% nuclear. Yeah. Germany was at one point in time
at 26.
26. But look at the Ukraine, South Korea, Japan. So these guys shouldn't be hurting too much for energy and having to lean on coal or any other source.
Yeah, but excuse me, let me just bring in for a second, Ken. I think just the figure for Ukraine, I think that was before Chernobyl.
Oh, okay. No, I think this was 2016.
Oh, okay. Wasn't before Chernobyl. Sorry.
Right.
Even after Chernobyl, they were doing 50%. Wow.
Wow. Right. So, I spent many years working against nuclear power and so forth. But if there is such an enormous threat from global warming, and we're coming to I don't think we're going to come to the end of the world in 10 years. But if we're coming to a precipice that we're going to, go past the point of where it's too late to fix anything, maybe we should be leaning on that. It's got its problems, obviously, with, Chernobyl, 3 Mile Island, Fukushima, and I know I'm leaving one or two. And also that most of the nuclear power plants are located in a place where they can easily be subject to cataclysmic flooding. They're near the ocean, tidal waves, or they're in a valley near a lake where they can be overflowed. And that's happened a lot, near catastrophes. However, I just wanted to throw that up there. So let's...
Ken, let me I'll make this quick, unusually for me. Quick comment on that.
Yeah.
A very dear friend of mine is one of the, I won't mention his name, but he's one of the leading nuclear safety engineers in the world, where he has an international recognition for what he's done in nuclear safety. He's a progressive. He's certainly not ideologically devoted to nuclear energy. But what he's told me is that, as so often happens, it all comes down to money. if you spend enough money, you can make nuclear energy very safe. Can you make it 100% safe? No, of course you can't. But it certainly could be a lot safer than it is now. The techniques are available. The techniques developed by people like him and colleagues all over the world are available. And it's a question of, if we want to continue to use nuclear energy, and I agree with what you just said, Ken, then it's simply a question of spending more money. And then it's either a government's going to do it where the nuclear utilities are government run, or are the private companies going to do it with less chance of that happening. But it is possible to make nuclear energy safer than it is now.
Right. Okay. Hey, Mike, come on, speak up. Let's.
Let me.
Yeah.
You hear me?
Go ahead, Michael.
Can you hear me?
Yep.
Okay. Years ago,
You're fading out again. It's like a chicken that's getting choked or something. That's still.
And Ken, your camera is focusing on your chest.
Oh, yeah, there we go. Right, I moved it. Thank you.
Like I can think, you'll pardon me for saying there's certainly chests around the world that I would rather see cameras focused on than yours.
Me too. Okay, go back to Mike.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. Back when I was editor-in-chief of the Clinical paper, doing my investigative reporting, we had a saying that said, nuclear, you can never put anything like nuclear energy in the hands of
No, I don't, Mike. I can't really hear you. I don't think anybody does.
No,
it's
right.
going to sound like like that.
I think you're being very kind in the invitation, Ken.
Yeah. Okay. You need to get a microphone and plug it in or something. Or I don't know why. I don't know why it goes in and out like that. Maybe you could try switching onto your phone instead of the tablet. It might be better.
Can you hear me at all?
Yes, but only for when you say things like, "Can you hear me?" And then when you start talking, it's gone.
I guess it goes by which words I use.
Perhaps.
Better.
Yeah. Nothing there. Nope, nothing. So we're going to go on. We'll come back and you'll maybe make a comment later. Alex, take us to another topic.
Right now, I get the right group of. Jeez. No, I moved everything around. Come on.
It's okay.
Nope, not that one. Not that one. I'm looking here about new. Jeez. Wait, did I? Well, let me go window. That'll get me to the right one. Wait.
Sounds like you're singing.
Yes.
The song of the computer is not working quite right.
Steve, several of the topics you requested we'd already covered. Go ahead, Mike. Alex, what do you got? Go for it.
Well, this was something related, but that was for yesterday. Where did I put that group of? Ken, you pick another clip because I gotta find all those.
All right, I'll give it a try.
I moved the web page, the web browser around, so.
We're all going. We're all making signs of frustration. Steve, why don't you please, while we're plugging around here, what do you think of the what's happening with the with Biden and the COVID mandates. You have a background in that field, right, Steve?
Yes. Oh.
So are mandates
And
effective?
I found the clip, Ken. If you
okay,
want.
but let me get Steve's opinion on the mandates.
Oh, sure.
Yeah, I think.
Yeah, because you have been around when we've been talking about them. So
yeah.
Well, it's very interesting. I don't know how many of the people on this, here around this table know it, but there's, aside from Robert F. Kennedy Jr., who I think is nuts, there is, I see that there's anybody see the Action Greens listserv? No. Okay. Well, you're lucky. It's been dominated by left-wing anti-vaxxers. And the position they take is that mandates, any requirements for giving vaccine violate the Nuremberg Code, which is a complete distortion because nobody, at least nobody I know in the public health field, certainly I and certainly Dr. Fauci, who knows a lot more about it than I do, but I think I know a fair amount about public policy and public health. None of us are advocating that that anybody can be forced to take a shot.
Oh, except for Steve. Actually, there's a German politician who apparently is literally advocating that the police come to your house, arrest you if you haven't been vaccinated, and bring you before some kind of vaccine court to be forcibly injected. In Germany.
Oh, in Germany.
I know it's in Germany. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Well, also, I think something like that is being proposed. There may already exist in Austria, but certainly not here. And any medical procedure applied to anybody, they have to give their informed consent. And if they don't, I mean, if they're informed from the scientific point of view incorrectly, but they don't give their consent, they cannot be vaccinated, and they should not be vaccinated. So that is that's on vaccine mandates. And let's talk about in the United States exclusively for the time being. There's a difference between a vaccine mandate and a vaccine requirement. And I think that one of the mistakes that the political leaders from Biden on down and people in public health or public health leadership also have failed to make a distinction between mandate and requirement. Nobody can mandate anybody to get a vaccine shot. People can be required to get vaccine shots. On the one hand, to protect themselves, but even if that's not their interest, to protect others. And we have decades and decades of examples of this in the United States. All the vaccinations that kids are required to get to go to school. That is a vaccine requirement. That is not a vaccine mandate. If a parent doesn't want their child to be vaccinated, the child doesn't have to be vaccinated. And there are communities, there's a Jewish community in Rockland County, just to the northwest of New York City, that doesn't want their kids to be vaccinated. They have their own schools, and then there's no vaccination there. Every once in a while, there's a measles outbreak and blah, but I don't know that has happened in the past. I don't know the correct data. So I think that we have to distinguish, and I think that vaccine requirements are absolutely justified, particularly with this particular virus, which is highly transmissible through the air. And I think the for the protection of the health of the public, I think vaccine requirements, and I really wish they would use the term requirement rather than the word mandate. Last comment on this, I wrote a column on this subject a couple of weeks ago. It's fascinating in Texas, where Abbott has made this huge thing about there are not going to be any vaccine mandates in Texas. So they don't like those mandates. But of course, in Texas, they just love the mandate that if a woman happens to get pregnant, she is required to carry that pregnancy to term. So they're not against mandates. They're certainly for mandates in a situation where, in my view, it's totally unjustified and totally contrary to the First Amendment and the religion clause in the First Amendment. So, but that's another discussion that we can get into. But I wrote a column. It's called "Mandates, No Mandates." It depends where you stand. Last point. What I started saying, I've written on this issue a lot. Op-ed News, BuzzFlash. If you don't want to get a vaccine because getting vaccinated interferes in your personal freedom, and not being vaccinated, not wearing a mask, not observing social distancing is an expression of your personal freedom, what's the difference between that and expressing your personal freedom by defecating into a public water supply because that makes you feel good?
Yeah. Well, I don't think you have to get that extreme, you know. I mean,
that extreme is certain.
I mean, at least in LA, people drive down the street blasting songs and music that, you know, very few people want to hear. I guess you get that in New York too. So, but I wanted to ask you a particular thing, because Germany is, you know, requiring vaccinations because they were having a big surge there. But I know I heard this very particularly. You have to have had 2 shots of the Moderna or Pfizer, or have completely gone through and have natural immunity from having successfully gotten through a period, you know, and being infected. Yeah. So that's another issue, and also that's another issue that Germany recognizes it. I don't know how many other countries do, but apparently the federal government here doesn't recognize natural immunity from having gone through the course of the illness. The other issue is
a quick comment on that.
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, it's not that the federal government doesn't recognize that there's something called a natural immunity. Dr. Fauci and the people at CDC know very well that there's something called natural immunity. The position is that and you know, and both the left and far left and the right anti-vaxxers take this position. Oh, we should have natural immunity. You'd have to have hundreds of millions of people get sick, or tens of millions of people get sick and recover in order for natural immunity to have an effect on reducing the spread of the virus in the population. And
well, that's herd. That would be herd immunity. But
yeah,
I'm just talking about like getting into the supermarket. Show me your papers that you've been vaccinated, or that it's been verified you went through and acquired natural immunity by going through the course of the illness. It's not a question of
that's cumbersome.
That's cumbersome. Well, okay.
Yeah. But
and one other thing on the mandated thing, because they are being mandated. New York, where you're living, I assume you're in the Eastern Seaboard.
Well, yeah, I'm in Long Island.
Okay, there you go. De Blasio, I don't know if it's just from Manhattan. He's mandating, private companies either require their employees to get vaccinated or, get rid of them. And then also for children from 5 to 12, where I think if you do the mathematics, there's a higher risk of damage or reaction to the vaccine than there is to the virus currently for 5 to 12-year-olds. They don't need the shots.
Vaccination has been approved for 5 to 12.
I know.
So
But there
So there-
there
there's
there
a-
are
you know,
there's there
there's a
are
level of risk. There's a level of risk for anybody from getting vaccinated. I mean, that's absolutely true. But there has been approval at the national level for vaccination for children 5 to 12.
Yeah.
So the science on this indicates that this is sure. Are some kids going to get into trouble from it? Yes, but the science indicates that it's very few.
yeah,
And
but
you just have to be lucky.
I think the
not to be
science
lucky.
indicates it's higher than the consequences of getting the virus for 5 to 12.
Oh, I'm not familiar with that. That may very well be the.
All right.
be correct.
Okay.
I could do
All
it
right.
before it can.
Ken, a little.
Let's go to Mike. Mike wants to react. Yeah, let's go for it, Mike. Now you sound better.
First of all, I want to thank you, Ken, for letting me in on my new device. It only took you half an hour.
Okay.
No, actually, the science is saying the best science that I've seen, and there's, if you listen to what's on the media, et cetera, you'll get people coming out saying, well, this is the science. But if you look at the data that I've seen, that there's a lower risk for children 5 to 12 to be harmed by the vaccine than to be harmed by the virus.
Okay.
That's the data I've seen. So anyway, that being said, this whole thing about absolute freedom, because that's what they're talking about when people are saying it's against my freedom. Again, it goes back to the old canard. You have freedom, but you can't yell fire in a crowded theater. You have the freedom you have freedom up to a point. There is no such thing as absolute freedom.
Mm-hmm.
You don't have the freedom to live forever either, not at this point at least. So the fact is that people complaining about their freedom are really basically admitting that they're, put it in a negative way, that they're spoiled brats. They think they can have it all. They think they can have everything. And when you live in a civilization where there's other people around, you can't have everything.
Mm-hmm.
Only one person can have everything, and then everybody else has nothing. So the fact of the matter is, freedom is relative. And people have better get used to that. When you look at the generations that came out of the Second World War, they understood that. They understood that. But they're not running the world now, and they're only a small percent of the population. So what we have here is a bunch of people saying, who, sit there watching too much television and too many of the wrong movies and whatever, who have been catered to, or who have had who have been much more privileged than the generations before. You have people running around saying, I don't understand why I have to cut back. I don't understand why I have to do all these things.
Okay.
Everybody wants everything. So the fact is, okay, that point has been made. So the fact is that, the whole thing about the vaccines are, I hear people saying, well, the vaccines may do this to you in 20 years. And the people who are talking about bots and everything like that. We're not in a position now. We're not in a position. We finally let one virus get away from us, and it's now running. It's in charge now, and basically, if we want to get a hold of it, we're going to have to make some sacrifices. We're going to have to take possibly even some risks, but lower risks than we do if we don't do something about it.
Okay, got it. Thank
Yeah.
you. Got it. We got that. We hear it every day. Got it.
Okay.
Okay, let's go on to Alex. You got another topic.
Wait, hold it. I just wanted to get in my comment about the fuel thing, which I...
Okay, yeah, go ahead.
The energy situation is that when you have, when you have an energy source like nuclear energy or something, it depends upon who's running it. If you have a corrupt corporation that's looking to make a profit, or a government that's looking to cover its own ass or something, you're going to have a problem, and you're going to have a problem no matter what the energy source is. So I think we have to sort of change our values and our priorities. And also, the fact is about renewable energy.
and shall we say safer or greener energy sources. And I mean, we should have been investing in this at the same time as we were using coal and oil and fossil fuels.
Yep.
We should have been investing in that decades ago.
Okay, good.
We're
That's
still not. Hey, Ken.
Yeah,
we're
come
still
on.
not investing in it now.
Yeah,
we're not
good.
investing in it enough.
Okay, great. All right, Alex, bring up the next thing.
Okay, so I don't know if you heard about this one, but we have more Islamophobia from Representative Boebert, and this response from member of the squad, Rashida Tlaib. So
okay.
Earlier today, yeah.
It's a hot topic for discussion.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Thank you all so much for being here, and thank you so much for my colleagues. I'm not only a colleague up here, but I'm also a fellow Muslim. So thank you. Thank you, Ayana. You know I get emotional, but let me tell you, all of you, your solidarity means so much. Because when she said that, right, Debbie, when she said that, she was evoking violence on Muslims all across our country. And so it's important to know, and of course, Ilhan Omar, when I check up on her, she's like, sis, I survived war, I can survive this. She says that so that I can stop crying. But I also know that this is hard. This is hard for all of us. You know, women in politics, the violence towards us is increasing. I mean, Debbie, I remember when you were getting them. I remember all of us. I mean, it's just overwhelming. And all we want to do is serve the community that raised us, the community that brought us here. We do it so much from love. And so I just want you all to know that I am so incredibly grateful that you all are up here and sponsoring a resolution. We shouldn't have to beg and urge Republicans to do what's right here. You know, they have Muslims in their communities. I know they do. They call me to say, well, how can I talk to them? How can I get them to see us? Rashid, I have a clinic in their community. I do this nonprofit work in their community. How come they don't see us as neighbors, as fellow Americans? It is hard. It is hard being Muslim in our country right now, and this makes it worse. And so let me tell you, it is important for us to understand this is a national platform that we cannot allow her to use to evoke this is not only hate, and I think, Barbara Lee, you put it perfectly. It's not just hate speech, which is god-awful, but it's also hate speech that's evoking violence and danger towards a whole people in our country. You called a colleague a suicide bomber. You called her a terrorist. You were evicting invaders by saying that you said it about all Muslims in our country, and you know it. You know exactly what you were doing, and you have to be held accountable. We can't continue to say that bigotry has no place in our society, that violence has no place, and then not take any action, to be completely silent, to dismiss it. My two sons deserve to grow up in a country where their faith, their religion will not be used as a target. Muslims across our country deserve representatives on both sides of the aisle who will embrace them, not vilify them. That's why we're here today. That's why we're introducing this resolution. God, I want you to know this is so not political. This is so human and humanitarian. I mean, I just know that mother that's sending their child with that backpack to school is thinking this from Allah. I know it. We are sending a strong message that this is hate that will not be tolerated in the halls of Congress. We will not allow it to happen here, y'all. We will send a clear message to all of our Muslim neighbors, to everyone that experienced hate, that we are standing with you, that you deserve and you belong in our country. You deserve human dignity and you deserve to feel safe in your community. Accountability is key here. And I'm glad, Congresswoman Ayanna Pressley, that you have stood strong, that you took this leadership role of taking this on. Thank you from the bottom of my heart. Thank you for introducing this, and thank you to all my colleagues who have spoken up and not remained silent. It is so incredibly important. I gotta tell you, this is creating a culture that is so hard. It is so hard. I still remember my son questioning whether or not he can tell people he's Muslim. I don't want him growing up in a country like that. And we can't allow a colleague to be able to evoke that. We can't. It's just wrong because it is increasing violence towards Muslims. And I don't want to see the hate crime statistics go up. Behind every hate crime is a mother, a daughter, sister, father, anybody. We've seen it over and over again. And I'm done staying silent, and I'm so glad. There might be only 3 Muslims in Congress right now, but I feel like we have hundreds right now up here standing together. So thank you so much.
Okay, so, well, probably most people forget that back in 2000, George W. Bush, ironically, got the majority of the Muslim vote at that time. Basically, because Al Gore, among his many stupid things he did during his campaign, never bothered to court them. So, and again, obviously, there's many conservative Muslims, and so and Arabs in general. So they voted Republican that election, and certainly in enough numbers to help him win Florida. But then, of course, 9/11 came along, and, ever since, the Republicans have been, and it really goes back to the war on terror. I mean, it's a war on terror that stoked Islamophobia, not just in the U.S., but around the world. The fact that the U.S. basically has been fighting a war on Islam, killing Muslims for the last 20 years, that's going to translate into hate and hate crimes domestically. So, but again, this is just, the latest, again, also from Congresswoman Boebert, and again, against the squad. I'm sure she'll get more money, more donations from the Islamophobes that fund her. So, So, what are your thoughts, Ken, on this?
Oh no, I'm moderating. I don't have to. I don't have to be brought to slaughter. But I do want to say, I will be coming to New York, and I'm going to demand that you buy me a cheeseburger because you made me watch that.
We can do that.
I had to watch that really poor performance. I've seen much better schlock than that on most soap operas every day.
Oh, really?
Oh, my God! Oh, my God! Oh, my God! Okay. She said something I didn't like, Everybody fall over now.
Okay, Mike. Well, let's send it to Mike since he's an actor.
Yeah.
Did you find her performance unworthy, Mike?
Well, no, it wasn't a good performance because I don't think she was acting. But I mean, she was put off. There's no doubt about that, and I find her.
Could we hold it a minute? Could we get back? So, just for consistency, what was the initial incident? It was somebody in an elevator saying to Ilhan Omar, "I guess it's okay. She's not carrying a backpack, so we don't have to worry today." Which is kind of like dark humor, right?
Right.
Okay, it's kind of like saying he's Jewish. Hold on to your wallet. It's a racist joke in an elevator. Maybe she referred to it somewhere publicly, but it was a joke in an elevator. And we should have a Congress write laws against this stuff. This is the cancel culture. This is how we're going to control everybody. Everybody's getting fired because they looked at a woman the wrong way, or they did this or they did that. It's gotten so bad that the media talks about Cuomo, Andrew Cuomo, and they call it, he's a sex pest. He's a sex pest. He didn't do anything. He's just a sex pest. And then his brother tried to help him. Out now. So, and this is the same thing. So somebody made an off-color joke, which I think that woman apologized. They make apologies sometimes, but they don't take responsibility for their own offensive statements that they make about congressmen or senators that they disagree with. Because I heard it come out of the mouth of AOC when she said, he's a coward and a bigot and a slime ball. She criticized some other congressman. So what about that? Isn't that offensive? So I'm just saying, this is just tear jerker. Oh my God, it's another Holocaust. No, she's not talking about. Why don't they bring up the fact that Biden bombed some people after the 13 people were killed in Afghanistan? He had to rush out and kill, 20 people. dropping a bomb on some innocent people in Afghanistan? Why don't they talk about the 1 million people got killed in the Iraq War? That's significant. Not somebody making an off-color joke in an elevator. That's just really silly. I'm sorry. I didn't say that. That was my evil twin. That was my evil twin.
All right. Well,
All
Steve.
right. Let's go to Mike.
Your
I'm sorry,
thoughts?
Mike. So that's what the incident was.
Okay.
She doesn't have a backpack. I guess she's okay.
All right, Ken. I'm sure glad you didn't want to make a comment.
Right.
The idea is that if it was a joke, there would, again, this goes back to intent. The intent. If the joke is to make is to make a joke at the expense of someone or to make fun of someone, then it's it's an ill-tempered joke. Okay. Then you can take offense at it. If somebody makes a joke and said, I'm only kidding, and everything like that, and we're pals and I have great respect for you, then that's different. Somehow I think that let's call it a joke or a comment, was not made with, shall we say, friendly intention. And that is probably what's being taken offense at. But I think I think she's being a little naive if she doesn't see that this is basically still a racist country. I mean, people, you had representatives who were racist and anti-Semitic for the past 100 years. I mean, obviously, if you were African American, there was a hell of a lot of that. Jews, there was a lot of it. Latino, Asian, you name it. You go back far enough, further, Italian, further than that, Irish. This country has been racist almost from day one. Yes, we've been trying to get rid of it. You could say that there have been some improvements, but we've certainly taken a step backwards in the past few years, as far as people being blatant and almost proud of it. So I think it's a little naive of her to think that that somebody who was elected to Congress wouldn't be that way. First of all, if the people who put that person in are that way, of course they're going to put somebody who's racist in. And the fact is, yeah, we still have to fight it. We're still fighting it, and we still have to fight it vehemently. But the fact is that, I think that when it comes to comments, it really depends upon how the comment was made. Ken, you're right. There have been some incidents in which somebody says something and they don't mean it that way, or it was as a joke.
Who's the judge? You want to be the judge?
Well, who's the judge? First of all, there's a simple way to do it. Somebody makes a joke. Somebody said, I find that offensive. And the person says, I didn't mean it that way. I've seen that happen in real life. I don't see why it can't happen in Congress.
But what if they say, I meant it that way?
Then they're racist.
So what?
What do you mean, so what?
It's not illegal to be a racist. It's not illegal to offend somebody. I think your behavior is reprehensible. I think you should go home and take a shower because you stink. That's not illegal.
We're not talking about legal. We're talking about moral and ethical.
No, she's in Congress. She's trying to get consequence. She's trying to get the person removed from committees because of what she said. Because she's trying to get legal action taken in the Congress.
People have been removed from committee for moral and ethical violations.
Yeah.
Not just legal violations. Just because it's within the law doesn't mean somebody can't be removed from a position in Congress because of it. And we see it all the time.
Okay. Oh, there's one other thing. I'm going to interrupt you because of a statement you made. This country is racist, okay? Which country isn't racist? Please, tell me.
What do you mean, which country? There are countries.
Which country isn't racist that's got a population more than 3 million people? Which country?
I'll tell you which countries are less racist.
Sure, go ahead. It's not racist.
Canada,
okay. Well, you meet somebody once a month, you run into another person walking through the woods.
I know a lot more about it.
I think you're wrong about that in Quebec. Quebec is fighting for independence, and they put in laws asserting speaking French, only naming people with or maybe that was France. They have all kinds of things to preserve their culture in Quebec. And
Yeah,
I don't know that much about Calgary or British Columbia. But so where are the Indians? What happened to the Indians that are living in Canada? What about the premier? What about the guy with the black face?
Put a lid on it for a second. Listen.
Your premier, the president was wearing blackface.
Jesus Christ, Ken.
Go ahead.
I mean, if you just want to talk, we can all go off the show and you can just spend the next hour talking.
All right, go ahead.
Thank you. I'm just saying Canada is less racist. They have a lot to answer for in how they dealt with First Nation people. Although they didn't deal with the United States was worse with First Nations people. I didn't say Canada is racism free. I said it's less racist than the United States. And there's about 20 other democracies that are less racist than the United States, if not 30, if not 40. The United States is one of the more racist democracies in the world. I didn't say it's the most racist, but it's more racist than most.
Not than most.
Well, you name countries that are more democracies that are more racist than ours.
Oh, democracies? Most of the countries in Africa, which are democracies, most of the countries
than ours. Do you have any evidence to support that?
Yeah, the news, the art, what's happening in those countries.
News?
Yeah. The guerrilla attacks, the wars, the breaking apart of Sudan, things like that. In the Middle East. Okay, the Middle East isn't democracies.
We're talking about democracy.
Okay.
Oh.
All right, it's a good topic.
You could definitely say Israel is more racist than the United States.
There you go.
They actually have it written into their laws.
Alex, you're off on a left-wing deep end. Israel is not more racist. It is less racist than the United States.
There you go.
Now come up with another one.
No, Mike, because you've talked about how they treat Ethiopian Jews, not just
Alex, I'm going to say
non-Jews, especially not. Well, again, how they treat the Palestinians, Mike. I mean, that's not based on racism.
Alex, get your head out of the clouds there. Yeah. I said less racist than the United States. They said the United States is more racist than Israel. It's more racist than Canada. I'll even go further and say it's more racist than Britain. And we all know what Britain did with Ireland for God knows how long. It's more racist than Ireland. It's more racist, even more racist than Australia. And Australia has a lot to answer for in its treatment of Aboriginal people. It's more racist than New Zealand. I mean...
It's more racist than Poland. It's more racist than Denmark. It's more racist than any of the European countries that colonized Africa.
It's more racist than Denmark. I'm talking about, pretty much in the present or recent past.
Yeah.
It's more racist than the Scandinavian countries.
Uh-huh.
Yes, it is. United States is more racist than most democracies in the world. That's what I've deduced. If you have another deduction and you can have evidence to bring it up to support it,
I
fine.
want to go in circles.
I wouldn't argue it. I wouldn't. I'm carved down. I'll give you the point. In terms of democracies, the U.S. is in the lower half.
Okay.
Of democracies.
Yeah.
But not China. Poland is racist. Germany was very racist. It's not now, but it was.
All right.
Wait for the next war. Japan is currently very racist. You can't become a citizen there.
That goes back centuries, Ken.
Yeah, sure.
That goes back to 1625. It's a completely different situation.
Well, it's the Japanese. They don't, their opinion about the rest of the world is we're the Japanese, you're not,
Yeah, I'll just make a quick comment on Japanese history. Japan is the only non-European country that was not colonized by a European country. The only one. And they did it because they closed the borders in 1625 because they knew what would happen if they kept the borders open. Even then they knew. Uh-huh. So it's sure It's the it's the Middle Kingdom. They just like for the Chinese, they're the Middle Kingdom, but it was so that's part of it is ideological. And I've spent a lot of time on Japanese history. It was a very political decision.
But currently, they're what we would call racist. They make a lot of decisions on the basis of origin.
Yeah, yes, that's true. But currently, interestingly enough, because of the aging population, they are now very slowly opening up the immigration because they need younger workers.
Right. Yeah. Okay. All right. So anyhow, let's go. I'll shut up. I'm sorry.
Wait, we didn't let
very rude.
Dennis has a comment.
Hey, listen,
Dennis. Let's go to Dennis. Mike, you talked. I talked.
Can I just?
I'd like to say something.
Can I make a quick comment?
No. Hold it, Stephen. Dennis goes. Dennis hasn't spoken.
Malcolm
I'm
X
shutting up.
once said, "You can't have capitalism without racism," and I'll leave it at that.
Who said that?
Malcolm X.
Can't have
capitalism
without racism. Okay, that sounds good. Now, go ahead. Let's go back to Steve. Go ahead, Steve. You had more to say about the. Let's go back to the woman who's complaining about the slander.
I'd rather go back. If I may, Ken, I want to go back to the woman about whom Representative Tlaib is complaining.
Right.
It's not in the context of somebody in a bar or somebody in a restaurant or somebody on a golf course making a racist comment. That's not what this is about. What this is about is an elected representative, one of 435 elected representatives in the United States Congress using racism politically. That's the point. That it's not that Boebert's entitled to be a racist. Anybody in this country, anybody in any country, if they want to be a racist, they can be a racist. But Boebert is using racism for political purposes. The second comment I'll make on this, and then I'll stop, although I could go on about it for about a half an hour, is that let's not forget that Boebert's comment about Tlaib, no, she wasn't a terrorist because she wasn't carrying I mean, my God, somebody's carrying well, it's because of the color. See, if I were in the elevator carrying a backpack, well, that would be okay. But of course, but it's the whole racist thing. This is in the context of Gosar saying that he would like to kill AOC. And worse than that, in my view, is the Republican Party did nothing about it. They said, oh, that's okay. And that's a danger for all of us, Ken and Alex and Dennis and Mike and anybody who happens to be listening, because that's the direction we're going in. We are going in the direction of using racism for political purposes nationally. Of course, anti-Black racism has been used locally and regionally, since the beginning of the country. But now this stuff is being used on a national basis. The Republican Party is becoming a national racist party. One of their representatives threatens to kill another member of the Congress, and the Republican. The worst thing about it, if you've been at Gosar, he's a terrible person. Forget about him. But just think about the party, and that the party will do nothing about him.
Good point. Okay, and next, anything else on the racist? Because it's late in the night. We don't want to get all night on it.
Yeah. I have other clips, Ken.
Oh, you do? Go ahead.
Yeah.
Take us out. Bring up another clip.
Oh, we still have another few minutes.
Sure.
So here I want to play some clips from Telesur about what's going on in the Southern Hemisphere. So here we have what's going on in Peru.
Congress voted against a motion to
full page
against President Pedro Castillo this Tuesday. The unicameral legislature vote saw 46 lawmakers in favor and 76 against the motion, with 4 abstentions.
The motion needed 52 votes to pass, which would have forced an impeachment trial with a higher threshold to remove Castillo from office. This was the second attempt by right-wing sectors to oust Castillo, who has faced fierce opposition and media campaigns against his government ever since taking office. On Monday, the president met with leaders of several political parties to attempt to install dialogue and ensure political stability in a nation that suffered a long political crisis prior to Castillo's election, with 3 different presidents in the space of a week in 2020.
This is Chile.
Peru.
Peru. Okay.
They really don't like him because he's indigenous, for one thing, and so of course the whites, the Spanish descendants of the Spanish are, and are very well. Plus, he's on the left, Castillo. So, and of course, Peru still has the influence of he defeated Fujimori's daughter, and so he's got a strenuous opposition from the extreme right, who have that. Yeah. So let's go to better news. We have what happened in Chile here, which is again they legalize same-sex marriage. So this was.
We'll come back to you from the South. Chile's Congress approved a long-awaited bill to legalize same-sex marriage on Tuesday, joining just a handful of countries in Latin America. The law will also enable married same-sex couples to adopt children. The bill received the green light from the upper house on Tuesday and was immediately given the final stamp of approval by the lower chamber of deputies with 82 votes to 20 against. Same-sex couples could only get married in Costa Rica, Ecuador, Colombia, Brazil, Uruguay, and Argentina, and in 14 of Mexico's 32 states up until now. Chile has been eagerly awaiting the legalization of same-sex marriage since when President Michelle Bachelet sent a bill to Congress in 2017.
Equal marriage. I think Chile took an important step in a very transversal way, but we still have to keep moving forward. Because as the same organizations have told us, this does not end violence against the LGBTQI plus community. This is only a step towards certain American rights, but there is still a long way to go in this regard.
It is hard to believe that today we are taking this step, but this step could be taken thanks to the fact that we have been working for years on a profound cultural change, on the common sense of the majority, which today does not express itself discriminatorily in its great majority. Today, the common sense of the majority speaks of acceptance of diversity, and in this institutions are in debt. Therefore, together with celebrating same-sex marriage as a fundamental milestone in our history.
Okay, could you, Alex, just summarize what was in those 2 articles? Because
in Chile, they've just became one of just a few Latin American countries that allow same-sex marriage, and also they legalized adoption by same-sex couples. I'll try to go, 10, 20 years ago, you would as late as that, you would have probably thought this was, never going to happen because, these are Catholic countries, they're very conservative, etc. And of course, most countries haven't legalized same-sex marriage, but this is after a great deal of political work by activists there, they've achieved that. Go get the other. So within Peru, again, they've this is the second time they tried to impeach the left-wing president Pedro Castillo,
who's just been elected, right?
It's just just a few months ago, but they're already so he's already tied Trump for, although of course, although I guess technically you say, as again, their Congress did not vote to even begin impeachment. So I guess technically you couldn't say he's been impeached. They began proceedings, and it was rejected by the representatives. So, there's an attempt to disrupt his presidency.
So the attempt to impeach him failed in Peru.
Yeah. And they probably knew it failed because, again, they tried it before and it failed. But this is, the far right trying to,
this is his
come
first.
Up the works,
This is his first term,
first
right?
first year in office. I think it's a 4 or 5 year term. I forget which.
And do you know much about the prospects of what it'll do for the government?
Well, he's talked about a lot more spending on social projects. He wants. He said some things about. Oh, he wants to nationalize the copper industry. Which remember that was the reason the U.S. had to take out Allende, or major reason that he was messing with. I forget which corporation it was. Well, and with ITT, of course, as you guys since you were around and I wasn't, might remember much better than me. That if you listen to Nixon's tapes, he actually talks about these things. Despise Nixon and Kissinger just of course despised Allende, and wanted to kill him, and of course he was overthrown in a coup and then probably committed suicide.
But this is a parliamentary election, right?
Well, no, it's a presidential system.
Oh, okay, it's a presidential system. Okay, great.
But he also has a majority his party has a majority in the legislature, so he's able to pass. I mean, he needs some help from some other he's in a coalition government. He has a coalition in the parliament, but he has the majority of seats. So he is able to push through. He's trying to push through again the legislation he's been talking about. So.
Okay, so who's got a perspective on this? Are you up on Peru and Chile, Steve?
Steve, yeah.
No. I was I actually was in Peru in 1954. So I do not have a perspective on the current situation in Peru. But I did get to Machu Picchu before. Yeah, and it was just being opened up in those days. It was quite a trip. But no, I just don't have a perspective on Peru.
Okay, Mike, what do you got to say about it? You glad the guy got elected?
Mike?
I don't know.
You don't know?
Jury's still out. We'll see what happens. I mean, I don't know, but trying to get somebody out of office the day you got him in. I don't know.
Well, of course, but what about, obviously the issue of same-sex marriage. You guys got to have an opinion on that.
The only thing I can say about same-sex marriage is like a joke somebody told me, and an actor I know, obviously, who's gay, who said, when same-sex marriage was approved here, he said, and I said, why, what's wrong? That's a great thing. You can get married. He said, yeah, but marriage isn't necessarily a good thing. So it depends upon how you look at it. No, I think, it's more advanced. People can, again, I go back to to my parents' generations or something like that. They said, look, people can do whatever they want as long as it doesn't harm anybody else. And the fact is, and whatever they want to do behind closed doors is their business. And the fact of the matter is, this whole moral issue, one thing I find in this country, this whole moral issue, and I know I'm going a little bit off on a tangent here, slightly. I'm saying the whole thing where they're against same-sex marriage, and they say, no, we're against, reproductive rights, et cetera, et cetera. They're against all these things on moral and
religious,
but they don't want their own personal freedoms impinged on. If this country, if nothing else, has become one of the bastions of hypocrisy. I think
Mike, that is no. Who said that?
I did.
Alex?
No.
Mike.
I mean, probably somebody said it.
I'm gonna remember that one. Bastions of hypocrisy. I'm writing. I just want you to know.
Put it in an article.
I'm going to use it in a column. It's fabulous.
Well, just give me credit, because I don't want anybody then, capitalizing on it and they get all the money. And I nothing.
You can't trademark it, Steve. Mike's got. You got to go down to the patent office, Mike.
You're gonna have to sit there in the thing and quote and say,
make T-shirts.
One of the foremost thinkers in the world today. Yeah.
Instead of a bastion of democracy, it's a bastion of hypocrisy. This is fabulous.
But maybe Dennis, any of I know you read a lot of different newsletters. So have you seen any that have had commented on Peru and what's been going on there? Dennis?
Come on, you're unmuted. Speak up, Dennis.
I just got back.
Okay.
So you were.
Well, they've got
talking about they're attempting to.
And
oh, sorry. We're talking about there's been an
impeachment now.
There was an attempt to another attempt to impeach the leftist president in Peru, Pedro Castillo, that failed. But we were wondering, I know you read so many newsletters, if you can recall anything on Peru that you've read recently in this new government.
Except Fujimori's daughter is
right.
I think she's an extreme right-wing person. Yeah. That's all I know.
Okay.
I stopped covering Peru after Fujimori was president.
Mm-hmm.
It left me speechless.
Okay. Anybody here who's not a hypocrite, raise your hand.
Oh, well.
Okay.
Everybody's.
There you go. Okay, great.
No. I'm not a hypocrite. It's okay for me to not be a hypocrite, but not anybody else.
Okay, there you go. All right, so let's. I've got another article here that we can watch. This is about the action in Ethiopia.
Oh yeah.
And I'm. This is something about what
you're
talking, and it's getting late for me. So
all right, Steve. It's good to have you as always.
Okay, all right, Steve.
I'll see you next week, gentlemen.
Okay, really appreciate your attendance. Thanks.
Thank you
For all your wisdom.
You can use the phrase as much as you want.
Okay. Here we go.
Take care, Steve.
Bye.
Is this coming across?
Yeah, we're seeing it, Ken.
And I got to turn the sound on. Da 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 da.
Within these bushes, Oromo Liberation Army fighters are carrying out their morning parade. They have no headquarters or base and move constantly in the direction of the federal forces.
Sagri tokko baasne gidduu kan keenya sagriin sadi weerara dhufe. Waan kana hojjennaa jechuun mallattoo lama baafannaa duratti duubatti battala waan sadi callaa.
Since the start of the war, the OLA has fought many battles with the army. It now occupies territory located only a few hours' drive from Addis Ababa. Today, these soldiers are training for combat.
Then our army is ready to crash this military of Ethiopian regime. We have a program to do that from day to day, from week to week. In a month, we have a plan to do the practice, and also we do something on the field rather than practice always.
The men enlisted by the OLA are not professional fighters. Some were students, others were working. They took up arms and received formal military training to go up against government forces.
We in the OLA, our goal is to liberate our people and our land. We're not afraid of death. We're not afraid to stand up to our enemies. If necessary, we will break our own bones into pieces to build the bridges that will lead our people to freedom. The government soldiers don't know why they fight, so they're afraid. But we're determined, and that's why we're winning.
The OLA claims many victories. In this video, which the rebels say they filmed on September 15th, they take control of a town west of Addis Ababa. According to them, residents of the town welcome their win, and many internally displaced people come to ask for their protection. Other civilians opted to leave and took refuge further south, on the other side of the border in Kenya. 100 families live in this makeshift camp. They left everything when the army invaded their village. They explained that the military killed one of their own and were planning to execute some men in the village.
They told us this boy wasn't going to be the only one killed, that they had a list of 17 men who were going to be executed. So we were very scared. We immediately decided to flee to Kenya. That was on April 15th.
No access to water or a doctor. Living conditions here are harsh, and village elders are unable to say when it will be possible to return to Ethiopia.
At the moment, there is fighting between Oromo and Amhara forces who are collaborating with the government. Recently, I heard on radio that 20 Oromo were killed. Their houses were burned. The situation is still terrible, and killings are still being carried out. About this war, I can't do anything about it, and I don't think we can expect much from it. It's not going to change our lives.
While he remains doubtful, OLA soldiers say they're fighting for civilians. They want to help the people they consider oppressed by Prime Minister Abiy Ahmed's government.
They steal our property. They rape women, even pregnant women who end up losing their babies. Parents and their children are killed in front of each other. I am fighting with the OLA to free the Oromo people and stop the violation of our rights. I have given up on my comforts, left my home, and I am ready to die to liberate my people.
Off to the side, the group's leaders discuss their next plan of action. The second in command predicts that the rebels will topple the government.
We want to bring down this murderous regime, along with other people whose rights are being violated, like the Tigrayans and other tribes in Ethiopia. We will unite and form a transitional government that will take care of all the people who have been oppressed.
The rebel groups are unable to say when they plan to attack Addis Ababa, but they're less than 200 kilometers from the capital. To suppress them, the Prime Minister declared that he's leading troops to the front line. In the meantime, the rebels say that they're confident that soon they will take power.
It'll be done in a second.
And actually, Ken, I have some maps to show how the government has already pushed them, push them back. so their hopes to liberate these.
The government's already.
I'll put it up. So this is from South Front that usually does good military analysis. So they show here again. Actually, so I think that
that was another clip.
I think it was on the first, they said. So already again, basically, that marked kind of the high water point. So you can see here on the days following again here through December 5th, the government retook all of these towns, here, and here. And not only that, but the latest, I went to, for the latest update, you can see they've been rolled back all the way, here again from down here to again up to past this road. So they've really lost a lot of ground. Again, how based on reports, and so again, their hopes to take over the country appear to be. Well, it looks like the government made a big effort to mobilize the population. Again, the prime minister literally went to the front, so it appears to have paid dividends. And now they're, we'll see how things develop. But they're on the offensive now, and they've really pushed. You can see they pushed them back. I guess it must be like 20, 30 kilometers from here to here. So they've really rolled them back. So yeah.
Well, I got to ask this two key questions. If this is a proxy war, who's supplying them with weapons? Which country or which regime?
I think. I haven't heard of any. The people made allegation that the U.S. is supplying the Tigrayans because again they don't like the current government of Ethiopia. But beyond, I haven't heard anything about like are the Russians or Chinese
Or what about Eritrea? What about
involved?
what
No, Eritrea supports the Ethiopian. In fact, they're in kind of essentially like an alliance with them,
with the rebels or the
with the government. No,
with the government?
they've been in support of the government and actually sent some troops in, I think.
So they could send troops right in on the rear end of these. They could push
Yeah,
them from the
yeah.
back, the northern
If they want
flank.
to really get involved, yeah, yeah.
So you don't know if it's the Yemen, Sudanese, the
Eritrea,
Russians,
to the country of Eritrea.
you don't know who's supporting the
Supporting
guerrillas.
rebels.
And,
Yeah.
and one other question, and then I'll go to you guys. The scary thing for me is like watching that. So here's these guys out in the field with the weapons and so forth. What happens if they take over towns? What do they implement? What kind of a government?
Well,
what kind of a society?
Well, there are already accusations of atrocities on both sides.
Yeah.
So,
I mean, who's gonna?
and they
who's
probably
gonna-
are committing some. It's a war. Those kinds of things, fortunately, happen.
Okay. All right. So Dennis or Mike, who wants to speak up on this? Mike.
Well, I'll tell you one thing. Now I know why. One reason why all those Ethiopian Jews want to go to Israel. Boy, what a mess! Poor Ethiopia. Throughout
It just might be economic, though, Mike. I mean, too.
Well, I know, but the fact is, I'm just making a comment on the situation there. It's tragic. I would like to know who is supporting the rebels.
Yeah.
Again, the only thing I've seen, though, there are allegations the Americans are somehow supporting the Tigrayan People's Front. Whether that's true or again, and
And what is the
consistent
platform?
that they think the U.S. is? I know what, and whether that means they're providing financial support. They're actually, I think pretty much everybody uses Soviet type weapons. I don't think you're finding too many M16s around because that's Ethiopia back in the 80s was a Soviet client state, so the military is pretty much Russian, Soviet era equipment still. So I think they would, keep up with all that essentially.
And the other key question: what's the primary?
Have that equipment.
What's the primary resource that people would want to get control of?
Well, one thing is the dams. Remember that they're building, which will provide again a great deal of electricity. They have, of course, it's a big country. They have oil. Sorry, you can see down here. They're even again, you can see they're building a pipeline through to Djibouti.
Now, what is the platform that the rebels? What's their political platform?
Well, really, again, the Tigrayans were running the government some years ago, so really, it's about them wanting to be back on top. Again, what they claim is, they're fighting against, the oppressive government, essentially, that is persecuting them as a minority, etc.
So, what if they got control of the government? What kind of
And they'll
government?
become the oppressive government.
They'll become oppressive.
Yeah.
I'm just trying to figure out: are they more, in other words?
Because that when they were in charge of Ethiopia, that the Tigray they were rather repressive of other and essentially favoring their ethnic group over everybody else, even though they're not they're not the largest ethnic group.
Are they in favor of democracy or more?
Well, unclear. Of course, they say that they're in favor, but again, they're also using force to
Well, no, I'm
impose
just
a democracy, even if they want to,
a lot of.
As a minority, that kind of doesn't make sense. Minority is going to bring you democracy.
A lot of rebellions talk about what they're against, but they don't talk about what they're for. They talk about what they want who they want out of office, but they don't talk about what to do.
Yeah, that's pretty much includes them too.
I'm going to bring up another map before this.
Sure.
There's a bigger picture here. Let's see. If I just go to it, there it is. I guess that knocks you out, right?
Yeah, yeah.
Okay, great. So let me zoom in on it and see if I can make it whole page or not. That's good enough. So if we go over here and zoom in, we see it's right here on the, there's Eritrea and Djibouti, but it's very close to the Red Sea access.
Yeah.
Where's
It's the Horn of Africa.
Right. And that's very tight. This is the horn, there's one way things come out from this way. Oil comes out from Iraq. But this way is a
well, everything comes out, yeah.
Yeah, everything's very significant route, but they're not right on the coast.
Right, things come up obviously the southern coast of Africa and go through the Red Sea to Europe, but
So I'm wondering if there's Saudi Arabia or anybody else having interest.
Not the Saudis, no. They're more, of course, focused on Yemen, where they're continue to lose that war very badly.
Who, Saudi Arabia is losing?
Yeah, and the UAE. Yeah, they're getting their asses handed to them.
Right?
By the Houthis. Yeah. Oh yeah, no. The Houthis keep advancing. They're on the path. The Saudis just withdrew from the western coast of Yemen and gave up a lot of territory to reposition. The important thing is, again, the Houthis looks like they're about to take the city of Marib in central. Well, it's like eastern Yemen, really central Yemen, and where that will put basically where the oil is under their control, which is of course what Marib over there. That's what it's a province too. So, but there's I can bring up the map on that. South Front has that too. So yeah, so they're Saudis have been losing, even though we've been keep supporting them, but they've been losing them badly. Here, I'll put that up now to show the recent situation. Okay, so the Saudis control the coast all the way up to here, Hudaya, which is the main port for the Houthis, but they fell back all the way to here. So they gave up a lot of territory, and now the big fight again is over here in Marib, which you can see they've almost surrounded. So, and again, all the oil is oil is all around here. So if they take Marib province, they got, they have the ball game essentially. What probably will happen is the country will break in two, which has happened before. There was a northern Yemen and a southern Yemen for decades until they unified at the end of the Cold War. And now this is kind of naturally recreating that.
But all the green, it says according to this map, the green is all Saudi-led forces.
Yeah, Saudi-led, right. But they keep losing because they're mostly mercenaries. The Saudis hire, Sudanese and other people to fight for them. And so obviously their motivation is less than, or they're, essentially Yemenis paid by the Saudis. So they're really all mercenaries, and they don't have the same motivation as the Yemenis fighting for their own country.
So the Houthis associated with the ISIS?
No.
So if they get rid of Saudi Arabia,
they're a Shia sect, but it's not just Shia. There are also a large number of Sunnis fighting with them. It's they're known as Ansar Allah.
We're going to send you down, Alex. We're going to set up a GoFundMe page. We're going to send you there as our correspondent. We want you to get the true story down there in the war zone.
Well, I would be taking my life into my hands because it's a very,
very dangerous,
very dangerous part. Well, again, there have been essentially starving population, and it's it's a war zone.
Okay, so but I know, but coming back to Mike's question, which I think is very relevant, here we can see that there's religious leadership between the different sects that are fighting.
Right, even the Israelis are a little bit involved in this because they occupied one of these islands out in the middle of the. Well, they have not occupied. They have like a base on one of these islands somewhere here.
Well, look how narrow it is. Everything coming out of the Red Sea has to go right around Purim Island.
Right.
right? It's like dangerous. I mean, that's like
Yeah.
a key. You could
Well,
choke.
that's why
That's why they're fighting.
The pirates, take
Yeah.
over ships in this area, and
So, but coming back to what we're talking about in Ethiopia, do you have any clue about what's the and to academic or what's the governing force behind the rebels? Is it Sunni, Shia, or what is it?
again, it's ethnic group against other ethnic group. Oh, and Ken, you're the way you've got your camera position, you're cutting off the top of your head.
Yeah. There you go. Just let the air out. That's all.
Yeah.
So I got this.
I mean, Jim, knows a lot too, so it's too bad he's.
Yeah. Well, he's suffering
He's not
tonight.
here, but again, the only thing I've heard about who was the allegation that the Americans are supporting the Tigrayan People's Liberation Front, which again, it's possible. I'm not sure. It's just
Okay.
That's again what a lot of Ethiopians believe, and again, a lot of the lefties I listen to.
Okay, so let's cut it out. We're about 8:00, and so we're gone. I think it was pretty good. I was only kidding about everything I said tonight. I was just joking, just trying to get a little steam going, But
don't worry, somebody from KPFK will watch this, and then you'll.
Just
you'll be. They'll set up the show trial for Ken Aaron.
I'll be Jeffrey Smollett, but for real. They'll hang me on a fence.
Okay.
Okay.
Good night, everybody.
All right. Good night, everybody.
Good night, Dennis.
And I'm going to put everybody out, and then I'm going to play the parting thing, and then we're going to go. So how do I do that? Here we go. Okay. Good night, everybody. Mute all of you guys, and now I'm going to play that file. There we go.